The next reason for the victory of the Soviet Union was the USSR. USSR was a very unique experiment in the history of humanity. You live in this country, and many other countries, not necessarily all imperialist, where every attempt is made to incite, the majority of the population, whenever there's a crisis of capitalism, against the minority, whites against blacks, sometimes blacks against blacks, it's always the newest arrival who is the target of such attacks. You can mobilize the Indians against the Somalis. It's quite an easy thing to do. But it's in the Soviet Union, where in Tsarist time there used to be fratricidal warfare. There was nothing but fraternal cooperation and harmony. The Soviet people, for the first time, had been able to live in peace and harmony with each other, where an injury to one was an injury to all. They wanted to defend the gains of the October Revolution. That's precisely why they fought so much. If the Soviet Union lost 27 million people, and in the Far East, the country that lost the most in fighting against fascism is China. Not the people who were at that time, but China. China lost fighting against the Japanese about 20 million. 60 million people were done to death in the Second World War, a war started by imperialism to prolong its life. Of those 60 million, 47 million are accounted for by the Soviet people and by the Chinese people. They are the ones who should be credited with the victory against fascism. You might want to know, the Soviet 27 million who died in fighting the Second World War, Soviet people, they represented about nearly 14% of the pre-war Soviet population. And what percentage of the population did the United States lose in the Second World War? 0.3% of its population. What percentage did Britain lose? 0.6% of her population. That's what they're. And these are the people we are told actually won the war for us. For every Allied soldiers, 40 Soviet soldiers died in the war. 190 German divisions invaded the Soviet Union. 77% of the German armed forces were mobilized against the USSR along the entire Soviet front. The length of the Soviet front during the war years varied from 2,200 kilometers to 6,200 kilometers, whereas the front of the Allies never exceeded 800 kilometers after the Normandy landings. Germany suffered by far its heaviest losses on the Soviet-German front, representing more than 73% of her losses in manpower and 75% in tanks and aircraft and 74% in artillery. So the Nazi hordes were destroyed on the Eastern Front, not in the Atlantic, not in North Africa, and not in Italy.
Absolutely. Yes.
I have to cut short this thing, but one of the reasons that the Soviet Union suffered so many losses is the allies of the Soviet Union refused to open a second front. Soviet Union is fighting in the East, and America and Britain. France was, of course, knocked out. France was under Nazi occupation. They refused to open a second front. What exactly was the reason for it? They wanted, again, the same policy of Germans fighting against the Soviets, both of them being weakened, and these people coming and then picking up the battle in the interest of peace and saying, no, we don't fight like that. They refused, in the circumstances, to open the second front. Stalin even met Churchill at one of the meetings in the Kremlin. And when he could not get them to open the second front, and each time the promise was made, the promise was never fulfilled. And then the Prime Minister of Britain, Churchill, was supported by the representative of President Roosevelt, Averell Harriman. Stalin then tried another trick. When he met Churchill at a meeting, Stalin said, "You're frightened of fighting the Germans, aren't you? Our Red Army fights every day and they're doing rather well. You should try fighting. Really, they're not so difficult to fight against." And Churchill, as you would expect him, he went into long speech, spoke for half an hour, Stalin listened quietly for half an hour and then said to the interpreter, I haven't understood a word of what the Prime Minister says because I don't speak English, but it was very impressive. So, so with that, he bust just Stalin's, Churchill's arrogance, and that was the end of the matter. But the Soviet Union knew precisely what happened. There was no second front because till the end, it was the attempt of these Western powers to come to an arrangement with the Nazis. There were negotiations going on. At the height of the Battle of Stalingrad, there were negotiations going on for the Western powers to come to an agreement with the Nazis. Either to have peace and the Nazis could carry on fighting against the Soviet Union, or alternatively, better still, to utilize the Nazi soldiers and along with the Western powers, march into the Soviet Union. This did not come about for a number of practical reasons, because the victories of the Red Army were squashing each of these plans and bringing them to an end. Even as late as the war is about to end, on April the 23rd, 1945, a mere 2 weeks after Stalin's communication to Churchill, in a cellar of the Swedish consulate in the old Hanseatic town of Lubeck, Count Folke Bernadotte, the one who was murdered by the Zionists later on, he's portrayed as a great saint murdered by the Zionists. I'm not saying Zionists are good people to have murdered him, but it's just a bit of information for your purposes. He was a UN envoy at the time. He was an envoy from an allegedly neutral country to Sweden, and he met Heinrich Himmler, no less than that, the chief of the SS. He held a secret meeting. At which Himmler signed a document of surrender to Britain and US on the assumption that the US and Britain would now take over the Eastern Front and march on Moscow, hand in hand with Germany. Hearing of the death on April the 12th, 1945 of, quotation, Jewish, unquote, Roosevelt. Nazis always describe Roosevelt as Jewish, because otherwise why would he go to war if he wasn't under the influence of Jews? Goebbels really believed that the miracle was in the making. This was not the case, is solely to be explained by the fact that by the time of Himmler's secret meeting with Count Bernadotte, Hitler's fate in the bunker was sealed by the Red Army's advance. Nonetheless, the Nazi leadership knew that Churchill had grave doubts about the fate of Eastern Europe. And even after the war, as the war is ending, Churchill gave instructions to his generals that they should prepare war against the Soviet Union. And the chief of the Imperial Staff, Sir Ellenbrook, said, look, this war is not going to be a one-day affair, it will be a long one, and we're not sure of victory. So these plans were eventually squashed. So people who tell us about Churchill, the great fighter against fascism, it's not true. Churchill himself was a little semi-fascist who was out to protect the British Empire, who had actually supported Hitler, because Hitler was the only one that could come to terms with the labor movement and the communists in Germany. He'd actually appeared in a cinema called Scala in Rome to support Mussolini. So Churchill had actually gone and enjoyed the spectacle of few anarchists being executed in the east of London. Churchill had a very, very devious history. He was a racist. He was part of the eugenics movement who wanted inferior people, disabled people to be bumped off. So he's a nasty piece of work, and he's now been reinvented as a new brand, as a fighter against fascism for the liberties of the world. Nothing of the kind. He was there as a true blue representative of British Empire trying to save the British Empire. The fact that the British Empire literally slipped out of his fingers is not because he didn't want to save it, it's just other powers became more powerful, notably the Soviet Union and the United States of America. When eventually, in 1944, the Western powers, the United States and Britain, decided to have the D-Day landings, which are supposed to have laid the basis for our liberties. The purpose of D-Day landings was not to liberate Europe. It was clear by then that the Soviet Union had cleared its territory of the Nazis. Soviet Union Red Army was marching through Poland and heading for Berlin. It was clear that Soviet Union was capable, through the Red Army, the Red Navy, and Red Air Force, single-handedly of defeating these countries. And as a result of it, it had put the fear of God in the camp of imperialism. So they wanted to go back and forestall the Soviet army from marching any further.